Terri McCarthy. I am a retired school counselor. I was a counselor for 28 years, a teacher for 2 years. I worked elementary, secondary, and at a university. I worked at Adolescent Substance Abuse Treatment Center for a year. So I've got a varied background with lots of ages, in fact, all age groups. So, but probably my best experience is having 3 kids of my own, because you learn so much. And we were just talking about how different kids are. I have 3 children. My oldest are 31, 30, and then I have a 15-year-old, a sophomore. She goes to Burnsville, actually. And they all present their challenges, you know, and you learn as you go along. And even though I've been doing this for years and years and years, I don't have all the answers, but when I get stuck, you know, I look for the answers, and I read what other people are doing and ask other people, and I have consulted professionals. And I haven't had any major issues, but I certainly don't have all the answers, and all the kids presented their challenges. But it's so good that you're here, because you can never know too much about kids. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, I've had a lot of different jobs outside of the home, but parenting is by far the hardest job I've ever had, because you're never off duty. You parent 24/7, and you face different challenges at each age group, and each age group has wonderful things about it too. You know, I enjoy my adult children so much, and I truly have enjoyed every stage of my kids' lives. But there were challenges too with every stage, and you gotta nip them in the bud. And of course, the earlier you do it, the better. But it's never too late. It's never too late. And the last school I was at Jefferson High School in Bloomington. And I know I've worked with some parents there that had issues with their kids. Many were drug related. And some of them that just threw up their hands and said, you know, it's too late for me to intervene. It is never too late to intervene. And as long as they're still under your roof, you know, you can still do your best to teach them. And there can still be consequences, and they are pretty much, they are your renters. You know, they don't own the home that they're in, and as long as they're in your home, they abide by your rules. And until they're out there on their own, they need to do what you say, and they need to abide by your rules. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but the point is, don't ever give up, and don't ever think that it's too late. So what we're going to talk about is some of the do's and don'ts, because prevention, detection, intervention, it all starts with parenting. And the things that you can do, whether or not your kids are using. Boundaries are so important. Kids have to have them until they leave the nest. They have to. And even though they might be very well behaved as teens, and you certainly want to give them more freedom if they're earning it, yes, but they still have to have boundaries. In fact, without boundaries, they kind of lose a sense of security. They might think it's a blast not to have boundaries and not to have as many rules when they get older, but it also gives them kind of an uneasy feeling, because teenagers will just run with it, and they'll run to a place that maybe isn't a good place to go. So yes, boundaries and communication is more important than anything with any relationship. And there are no do-overs with parenting. This is the thing. You really do have one shot at it. And that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes and learn from your mistakes. But what it means is, what I'm trying to say here is that those years go by so fast. you look and you think, where did this time go, and what happened? And even with Halloween, and the fact that, my kids are done with the trick-or-treating. My 15-year-old, this is her first year, she didn't go trick-or-treating. And I've got these little kids coming to my door, and I'm thinking, these were my kids. What happened? They're grown up, they grew up so fast. So working hard and doing your best while you have them under your tutelage is a win-win, even if you're not perfect, and there is no perfect parents. And they do emulate you, good or bad. If you're doing good things or bad things, they follow in your footsteps. They watch you so carefully. And if you're making mistakes over and over, they're going to learn that, and they're going to do that, even if they think it's bad. And I worked with so many kids that have come from dysfunctional families, and I was one of them. But even though they hated some of the things that their parents were doing, they found, and I found, they were doing the same things. And they hated it. But that's what they learned, and that's what they knew, and so that's what they did. So they do learn when they live. And I have here, you have an opportunity to change the world. And I know that sounds crazy, but as parents we do, because it's the most important job in the world. It really, really is. Lives begin and end with their parents. And if you're doing a lot of the right things, your children will do a lot of the right things. And so if you're paying it forward, they will pay it forward with people that are involved in their lives, with their children, with their children's children. And even though these may be very subtle things that you'll never be aware of, some of these things you won't be aware of, it will happen. And they will, it's like a ripple effect. If you're doing your best, if you're making a difference in their life, if they're following in your footsteps and seeing the wonderful things that you're doing, they're going to emulate that. They're going to do that. And it is going to affect hundreds of people, know it or not. It truly is. By the way, stop me at any point if you want to say anything or ask any questions. So when I was growing up, do you guys even know who these people are? Okay, because I know I'm way older than you. But when I was growing up, I thought this was the perfect family. And my family was so messed up. I used to daydream about, how nice it would be to be a Cleaver and have June and Ward as my parents. And of course, as I got older, I realized, and certainly as I became a parent, that as much as you try to be June and Ward, it's just not realistic. I mean, that wasn't a real family. It was entertaining, it was amusing, it was interesting, but it's certainly not real. In fact, this family, I hate to say it, but they're almost more realistic than that Cleaver family. Yes, highly dysfunctional. There has been stuff on the news about what the mom is doing, which is totally unacceptable. But there are more families that have, in fact, I think all families have a bit of dysfunction, and that's okay. I think when you get to the point where you're neglectful or abusive because of the dysfunction, it's totally unacceptable. But the point is, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. And what's important is that we learn from mistakes and we try to do better. So, having kids is all about life's sweet ambiguity. You never know what's going to happen from one day to the next. And I experienced this with my oldest. God, she was such a good kid. But there were still some things that I didn't expect from her, and things seemed to be going smooth one day, and then the next day you're thinking, well, who is this kid? What happened? Did I do something? What were we doing last week or last month that was working that suddenly isn't working anymore? And every kid is different. as we were saying earlier. So what worked for one kid isn't necessarily going to work for the other kid. And what worked one time isn't necessarily going to work the next time. So maybe there's a consequence. Maybe you say, okay, you're grounded. And so that's working. And then the next time something happens, you ground them again, but that just doesn't seem to be having any effect. Well then, go back into your bag of tricks and try something else that might work. So be willing to try new things is what I'm saying. But do be consistent as far as the behavior and the consequence, or the behavior and the reward. And if you can focus more on that, that's a real good thing. But do be consistent in doing these things and then following through so they know what to expect. And be willing to get help. Ask questions when you need it. My goodness, we all need it at some time. Don't overthink it. It's not rocket science. The bottom line is good logic and common sense. I mean, just think about it. Okay, so what's going on here? What's the big picture? What's behind this? Like, you found the marijuana. Okay, so maybe she's never used it, but it's kind of opened your eyes up to the possibility now. And so now maybe you need to take a closer look and certainly talk to her about it, about using it and about the problems and the consequences that it could cause, about what if situations. So, okay, so what if you're at a party and somebody starts smoking weed? What are you going to do? And what are you going to do if somebody passes it to you? And are you going to be afraid to say no? Are you going to think, they're not going to think I'm cool if I don't? And so talk to your kids about some of those possibilities. But logic and common sense, that is your friend every single time. And being consistent and following through. As long as you're doing these things and you're modeling positive behaviors, you're going to do fine. Okay. So these are things that you can do, and this is all pretty much common sense. Love them no matter what, and let them know that no matter what they do and what mistakes they make, you're always going to love them. You don't have to like the choices that they make, and you can tell them, that was a dumb choice. You're not a dumb kid, but that was a dumb choice. You know better than that, and I expect better things from you. And make sure that you walk the walk. So if you're saying, I don't want any foul language from you, I don't want any back talk, I don't want this or that, well, make sure you're living up to that. And you're not doing the things that you don't want your children to be doing. And this isn't about alcohol. Obviously, it's legal. Parents can drink alcohol, because what's come up a lot in my presentations is, well, does it mean that maybe we shouldn't be drinking at all around our kids? No, it doesn't mean that. But if you do have a drink or a couple of drinks, make sure you do it responsibly. And make sure you talk to them about it. And that you never get in the car and drive after you've had a couple of drinks. And that if you do drink and you do or say some things while you're drinking that you regret the next day, well then maybe it's not a good idea. So just think about being responsible when you're doing it and talking to your kids about why it's not a good idea for them to do it. And I've got some really good responses for that, and then I'll tell you about them in a second. But always reward good behaviors, always. And I don't mean you have to give them a present. I mean, please acknowledge it every single time. Nice job, I'm so proud of you, and make a bigger deal of the good things that they do than the bad things that they do. If the only recognition they get from their parents is when they do something wrong, well then they're more likely to do something wrong, because maybe they're going to start to think And this is very logical thinking. I get attention when I do something bad, so, and subconsciously, they don't even know that they're making that decision. But they're going to do this because they do then get attention from mom and dad. So if it's about them doing something good, so be it. And if it's a really big thing, like they get, maybe they've been struggling in a class and suddenly they bring that grade up by 1 or 2 letters, then make a big deal out of it. Maybe that deserves let's stop and pick up something for dinner that you like because you did it. It doesn't have to be a great big thing, but acknowledge it, talk about it, and share it with the family or with other people. Don't be afraid to share these things. The negative things, you don't have to make public. Obviously, that's not a good idea. Be involved, show interest in what they're doing, the things that they like, and attend as many activities as possible. And I know sometimes that's hard. Are your kids involved in any activities outside of school?
Mine are after school activities, connected to school. But
Yeah. So extracurricular, sports, anything like that?
Band.
Okay, that's wonderful. Your kids do they have any special hobbies or things they enjoy doing? Yeah. So showing interest, and even if that doesn't mean going someplace and watching them, if they're not doing that kind of thing, but whatever it is that they like, bring it up once in a while and say, well, show me what you've done, or if this is on display, I'm going to go see it, or if you're playing in the band, I'm going to be there as much as I can. When my older 2 were growing up, they both played soccer from the time that they were 4 until the time they graduated from high school. Now, if you've ever been, maybe you like soccer, but to me it was like watching paint dry. But I was there. As much as I possibly could be there, I was there because I knew it was important to them. And I knew they always looked for me and they wanted me to be there, and it was important to them. And I realized this because I remember I did different things, some sports and stuff in high school. And my mom was always there, which I thought was wonderful. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal at that time, but I remember she was sick once, and she could not come to my track meet. And I looked for her, and I realized she didn't show up, and I really, that didn't upset me, but I don't know, I certainly took notice, and because she was like my biggest cheerleader. So I love having her there, and I let her know that, and I realized that that's really important, kids. This is a biggie, and I know this is a tough one too because everybody's schedules are different, but whenever you possibly can, eat meals together. And I don't care if you're picking up burgers from the drive-thru. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you can sit down as a group for at least, I make my kids, well now one, she has to sit at the table with us for at least 20 minutes. And that's probably a long time for kids, and no technical devices, no electronics. No TV, no phone, nothing that's going to interfere with dinner. Phones are left on the counter, turned off. You're not texting, you're not doing anything. And meals are always positive. You don't talk about anything bad that's gone on that day. Not your bad day, maybe that you've had at work. Not something that you're upset with them about. That doesn't come up at dinner time. That can come up maybe at another time, after dinner or whenever, but at dinner time, it's all positive. And ask your kids to share. Tell me something about your day that was good today. What did you do that was fun? Who did you hang out with? Whatever it might be. And make sure that they bring that thought to dinner. And you share something positive too, or something that you're thankful for. It doesn't matter what it is. So this is a place they actually want to come. They want to be there for dinner because it's pleasant. It's pleasant, it's positive, nothing bad's going to happen at dinner time. And it's just a really good time to connect with your kids. So I'm kind of a stickler about this. Now, there's some things going on in this picture that I'm not really crazy about. It looks like the daughter is ready to go out the door. You notice dad is like this with his finger. So I have a feeling he might be reprimanding his son. Mom's not even sitting, she's standing. I don't know what's going on with her. So a lot of there are a few things wrong with this picture. He's at his desk. So they're sitting around his desk, which means he's probably preoccupied with work. So there are some things that really need to be fixed here. So total focus on the family, total positive. If you go to Wendy's and you're sitting around, we'll sit and talk for a while at Wendy's and don't get up and leave until you've had some pleasant conversation. Okay, be clear on rules and expectations. Now, a lot of times kids will come back and they'll say, well, I forgot that you told me that, or I don't remember that. I mean, even if you have to post rules, and there have been times when, we've had to put up reminders. You have to be home at such and such a time. This is what you do when you come home from school. Homework is first. Then this and this and this, whatever. So if there's a little schedule, you actually have to stick up on that refrigerator, do it as a reminder, so there's no questions. Be realistic with your expectations. Like if you come down too hard on your kids, they're only going to rebel. So be realistic. Be on the same page as your partner, because I know my youngest, my husband is a pushover. So when she was younger, she would ask me something, and if I said no, she'd go to dad. And lots of times he said yes. Well, that caused some friction between the two of us. And also, I didn't like the fact that my daughter would then go to him and ask him permission. So talk about these things. And if you're not on the same page as your partner, then, because my husband and I have lately, we've disagreed on curfews. He thought, as a 15-year-old, I think she should come home at 11 o'clock. He thought 12 was reasonable because some of her friends are staying out until 12 o'clock. Well, I thought that was too late, so we compromised, and on weekends now it's 11:30. So we have discussed it, and then you present it to your kids as a united front. Because if you're bickering about it in front of your kids, they're going to play both sides. It's not a good idea. So follow through. As I said before, punish privately. You don't need to humiliate your children in public or in front of their friends. You can give them your consequence or whatever it may be privately. But openly, if it's something positive, praise openly. Don't be afraid to brag a little bit to people when your kids are around or share something. I know I'm on Facebook, and I don't know if you're on Facebook, but a lot of people post nice things about their kids on Facebook. Sometimes it's a little overboard, I have to say, but certainly if one of my kids has a pretty significant accomplishment, I'll do that too, and she knows I do, and she thinks it's kind of cool. The punishment should fit the crime. Be real careful about this. Because sometimes if parents go overboard, and this happens sometimes with grounding. I mean, if it's something really serious and you need to ground your children, I totally get that. Because oftentimes it's a logical consequence. If they're going out and doing things that they're not supposed to do and getting in trouble, well, then certainly keeping them home for a while is good. But I have found that after a couple of weeks of grounding, it really loses its significance. I mean, it's no longer working. What you might do is make a deal with them and say, okay,
So what you did was pretty serious. And if you want to earn your way out of this grounding, these are some of the things that you can do. So maybe they can do some extra work around the house, maybe some chores, extra chores. Trust me, if you live in a house, you can find things for them to do and earn their way back out. Hit them where it hurts if you have to. And I know the biggest consequence for my daughter is taking her cell phone away. That's like literally, she feels like she's losing her right arm when we take her cell phone away, because that cuts off her communication with her friends. So, but it really depends on the nature of the crime, so to speak. And if it's just that, you know, they were being kind of sassy, you might just want to say, you know what, discussion is over, not going to talk to you anymore because I don't like the way you're talking to me. So when you're going to talk to me in a rational way, you can come back out. But for now, go away, go in your room, shut the door. When you're ready to have a rational discussion, come on back out. You know, that might be a consequence. So think about them in terms of the seriousness of what they've done. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. Timeouts work wonders, and I don't mean for your kids, I mean for you. All right? So if they're getting under your very last nerve, you might need to step away for a while. You might need to say, you know, I can't even talk to you about this anymore because I'm too angry. Sometimes when we are too angry as parents for rational discussion and rational thinking, it is a good idea to step away. You might want to go for a walk, drive in your car. You might just want to go in your room and shut the door and stay in there for a while. Do some deep breathing, whatever it takes. Take some time, calm down until you're ready to come out and have a rational discussion with your kids, because there have been a few times when my kids have pulled some stunts and they've come home and I was too angry even to offer them a consequence at that point. And I'm like, you know, we got to sleep on this. And we'll talk about this in the morning, because right now I'm too angry that I don't even think I can make a good rational decision. So the next day things might seem a lot clearer for you, and you might be able to think through it a little bit better. I don't know where I saw this, but I thought this was great. Tired of being hassled by your stupid parents? Act now. Move out, get a job, pay your own bills while you still know everything. And no matter how wonderful your children are, they really do get to a point when they're teens, sometime when they're teens, where they really think that they know everything and you know nothing, and everything you say is dumb. Do you ever get eye rolls from your kids? You know, it's like as a parent sometimes I feel like everything that comes out of my mouth is stupid, because I get so many of these from my 15-year-old, and they think they know everything. Well, obviously they're in for a rude awakening when they move out and when they have their own kids. Don't argue with your kids. It's a losing battle. If you let them suck you in to an argument where you're going round and round, and then voices are raised and sometimes there's some cussing involved, back off. Because what you've done now is you've lowered yourself to a child's level. You are still the parent, you are still in charge, and if you have to tell them once or twice why you're doing what you're doing or why you're upset with them, that's fine, but you don't need any further explanation. You can have a discussion, but do not argue. When kids say, why not, and how come, and I'm going to do that, and whatever it is, end the discussion and walk away. You don't need to give them more than one explanation. This is the way it is.
this is how it's going to be. Period. Remember that. You are in charge as long as they're under your roof. As I said before, they're your renters. You're the landlord. Okay. Given the opportunity, they will totally suck the life out of you. They will. I remember a friend of mine, a coworker, said this one day, and I said, I know what you're saying. If you let them, if you give them too much slack, they will suck the life out of you if given the opportunity. So do not allow your kids to do that. Keep the upper hand. Communication is so important in every single facet. As I said before, find every and any opportunity to say something positive to your kids, especially if you're really struggling. And my 15-year-old and I, we do this sometimes. And there are sometimes, ooh, boy, you know, I don't know. I'd like to put my hands around her neck. Of course, I'd never do that. But she's very moody. And when she's in a mood, I mean, there are times I would just like to, you know, tell her what I think. But what I try to do instead is to turn it into a positive conversation. And I might just say, you know what, honey, you're just way too nice to talk like that to anybody. Or I really appreciate the fact that you were nice to me today. Or, you know, I'm so pleased that you shower every day and you look so nice when you go to school. I like the way you're wearing your hair. It doesn't matter. Find something, especially when you're struggling with your kids, so that there can be a focus on something positive, at least one thing during the day, so it doesn't have to be all negative interaction. And it's not always like that with my 15-year-old, but she is moody. And there are days that I think, oh my gosh, can I find something good? I mean, sometimes it's a struggle, but if you look hard enough, you'll find it. You'll find it. Let them know that no matter what happens, that they can come to you with anything, and that you won't have a cow, that you won't lose it, that you'll listen. And there are times when they'll bring up things that you think, oh boy. Like Sydney has confessed to me that she's been to people's houses when kids were drinking or smoking. Oh my gosh, this is happening around my daughter. But I'm so glad you talked to me about it. And so far she's made the right decisions. One time she did call and I went and picked her up, and another time her and a friend that drives didn't leave the party. So some of these discussions are going to be really, really tough, especially if they say, you know what, I did try it, Mom or Dad. I have to confess, I did. And if you start ranting and raving right away, they're never going to come to you again. So let them know. First off, let them know, I'm so pleased that you told me. I respect your honesty so much. And there is going to be a consequence, unfortunately. But if I would have found out in another way, from another source, that you were there and you were doing this, it would be twice as bad. But now that you told me about this, I'm going to cut that consequence in half. So I'm going to take your phone, but it's only going to be for this length of time instead of whatever it could have been if you would have found out another way. Okay, actively listen to them. Listening is such an important piece of communication. Keep the conversations as simple as possible. Try not to lecture your kids because they tune out. Listen carefully to what they have to say. Actively respond. And don't ramble on and on and on, because they're not going to hear you. It's going to go in one ear and the other. Use I statements.
I was really worried that you were out past curfew. From now on, I want you home at 11 o'clock. That is stating how you feel, why you feel that way, and what you would like the outcome to be. Very, very simple. I statement. I feel this way. The reason, because you were out late. The request, from now on, I'd like you home by 11 o'clock because I was so worried about you. Okay? That's all you have to say. Don't assume that they know what you're thinking by giving them a dirty look or something. They don't know. And you know what? You also do not have to feel that you have to talk like a teenager or talk on their level to communicate with them. You don't have to be the cool parent. In fact, they really don't want you to be. Do you watch Modern Family, or have you ever watched Modern Family? Phil Dunphy, my favorite character. I saw this on the show a couple years ago. Oh, shoot. Am I not going to be able to do this? What? Oh, shoot. Well, it looks like we're not going to be able to watch it anyway. But what he does is he tries to act real cool, and he's saying, yo, dude, and all this other stuff and they're just looking at him like he's got three eyes. You know, you really don't have to do that. Just keep it real simple and talk to them in your own adult manner. But don't lecture, don't yell, don't cuss, and they will listen to you. Okay, we're going to go on to some prevention. Obviously, you would never let your baby drink, but under any circumstances, should you ever let your children drink at home? And I've heard so many adults say, you know, if they're going to have a drink, I'd rather that they did it under my roof. That's sending the wrong message. First of all, they're underage and it's against the law. So what you're saying is you can break the law as long as you do it at home. Secondly, if you do give them a taste and they think, well, I kind of like the buzz that it gave me, then, you know, you've just opened up this can of worms about them trying it outside of the home. It's never a good idea. And are they going to get to it somehow and drink? Yeah, if they want to do it bad enough, they will. But don't promote it. This is like promoting it if you allow them to drink at home. My son has said this to me, because my son is 6'4", and many of my students throughout the years, because I was in high school, were much bigger than me. And they were always like, well, you know, a lot of adults are a lot smaller than me, and I can handle alcohol if they can handle alcohol because I'm so much bigger. Well, that has nothing to do with it. Certainly at a certain age, your size is relevant as far as how much your body can physically handle. However, it has nothing to do with your size when you're a teenager. The fact is, and I'm going to keep this real simple, but it's a really good thing to tell your kids that ever come up with this argument. Your frontal lobe, this is the decision-making part of your brain right here. And that's the last part of your brain to be developed, because your brain develops from your stem forward. Okay, I'm no scientist, but I do know that. And this isn't fully developed until you're about 25 years old. So, teenagers' brains are not fully developed. The decision-making part of the brain isn't where it needs to be. And then you throw alcohol into the mix, where it does alter your thinking anyway. It's not a good combination, and it doesn't work. So technically and scientifically, really, until you're 25, you really shouldn't be drinking or taking anything that might alter your mind or your mood. Some people should never drink because they're already crazy. But certainly, this is a good reason for teenagers not to. Okay, I already said don't overreact.
If they have told you that, thank them for telling you and, follow up as I mentioned earlier. Now, some of these ideas I got from other parents. Do not allow friends, if you're letting your kids have other kids over, don't allow them to leave and then come back. Because oftentimes what they're doing is they're leaving to get something or to get high or drink, and then they're coming back to the party. Okay, so it's never a good idea. If they leave, that's their prerogative, but they're not allowed in. Do not allow them to enter more than one door in your house. And oh my gosh, I just added that last week because my daughter had a Halloween party last Friday night, and it really got out of hand because so many kids were showing up that she did not invite, that she didn't even know. So what we were doing, when kids came to the door and we didn't know them, we were like, "Are you friends of Sydney?" And they were like, "Yeah." So we call her upstairs and these kids, and some of them were like, and we'd say, "I'm sorry, you have to leave," and they may have been good kids, but we didn't know, and she didn't know that. So you're asking for trouble if you're letting anybody in. But what happened was, after we turned them away, and the kids were downstairs, the party was downstairs, we have a walkout in the back. These kids were running around to the back and trying to sneak in the back door. So my husband said, okay, he set our house alarm on just the back doors. So if anybody entered the back door, the alarm would go off. And it did happen twice that night. And we had to unarm the alarm, but it was such a hassle. And finally, we stopped. We went down there, we stopped the music, and we told everybody, it doesn't matter who comes to the back door, even if you look out the window and if you know them, don't let anyone in the back door. So it got crazy, and it was a real hassle. And it was a hassle for my daughter, too, because she had to continually run up to see if she knew these kids. And it just wasn't any fun for her. So one door they enter and make sure that you're there. Don't allow them to bring bags or big baggy jackets. And if they're wearing jackets and coats, and if they do bring a backpack, they drop them at the front door where you are, and you put them where the adults are, and you put them in a place where you can keep an eye on them until these kids leave. Never, under any circumstances, leave them unsupervised overnight. Doesn't matter how good your kids are. And I'm sure some kids are responsible enough to stay home alone overnight. But you don't know who's going to show up at the door and what they might bring. So it's just never a good idea. And this is what it could turn out like. And I don't know where this happened, but it was a picture. This is an actual photo of a house that was trashed over the weekend when some kids were left home alone. Their parents actually went away for the weekend. It was a beautiful home. I wish I would have had the before and after, if that's what happened. Signs that they're using, all of a sudden they become very secretive. They're spending a lot of time alone. They're defiant or very defensive whenever you ask them a question. You see some major mood swings. They might start stealing things or taking money out of your wallet or your purse. Things might start to go missing, and maybe it's because they're using it to pay for whatever it is. And lying is the biggie. If you suddenly are catching them in lies all the time. I had kids that I've worked with that have gone to rehab and have come out. And most of the kids have said to me that they are so glad they don't have to lie anymore, because they were lying to cover their lies, and that became their whole life, and it didn't feel good. And it's a lot of work to have to make up stories all the time. So if you find that your kids are doing that a lot, then they're hiding something. Lack of motivation, and they might already be unmotivated, but more so than usual. Physical signs, these are all pretty evident. I'm sure you've witnessed this with adults at some point. And the smell of marijuana, if you haven't smelled it, and most people have, it's kind of a almost a skunky, pungent smell, but it's pretty distinct. It's not the same as tobacco odor. Goofy, hyper, or exaggerated, and I mean goofier than normal. I sometimes wonder if her drastic changes were because of maybe something she was using. I know she admits that she uses marijuana on a regular basis. Okay, if all of a sudden these things have changed, they're dropping out of school activities, they're not doing fun things that they used to enjoy, and all of a sudden their friends are changing that they used to spend a lot of time with. And now maybe they don't want to bring their friends home, the kids that they're hanging out with. If kids are showing up and picking them out, your son or daughter is running out to get in the car to leave and doesn't want these kids to come to the door, there's something fishy. Now, a few times, friends have showed up to pick up my daughter and they haven't come to the door. So there have been a few times I just walked out and said, "Hey, I'm Sydney's mom. You can come in if you want." And I just wanted to let them know that, yes, I was going to meet them, one way or the other. And nobody's picking up my daughter that I've never seen before. So it's always a good idea to meet whoever it is they might be hanging out with. Grades really suffer. Their attendance, they might be tardy, but things suddenly change drastically, and then their behavior at school too. And if these things become a pattern, now grades go up and down, but if it becomes a pattern, and all of a sudden they're flatlining in all their subjects that they used to do well in, there's something going on. Make sure you probe. This is a sure sign when their health also starts to deteriorate, when any of these things are going on. And, one of the things that I mentioned was ongoing upper respiratory problems. And this is often a sign that they're using marijuana on a regular basis. And the reason being is that marijuana stores in your white blood cells. White blood cells are used to fight off infection, and viruses. And they're not working if they're full of marijuana. So as a result, most kids that smoke, people that smoke weed on a regular basis, they have a lot of colds, sore throats, coughing, things like that don't really seem to go away. The last would be if a teenager doesn't care about showering or their appearance anymore, there's something seriously wrong. Because most teenagers are pretty vain. They want to look nice. They want to impress. So that would be a dead giveaway. Now this is a girl that was a beautiful teenager, as you can see on the left. She was 17. And that's the picture on the right is what she looked like after using meth for 5 months. I mean, her looks just really deteriorating. Thank goodness use of meth has really declined because of what they've done in the area with different task groups and so on. Signs that they're dealing, and the reason I ask, how much did you find? That if they have baggies full of marijuana or anything else, and certainly if they have scales or anything like that, if they have a large amount of cash, or all of a sudden they're buying new things for themselves, or wearing these new clothes and saying that their friends gave them to them, or that they're holding this cash for their friend, or they have someone else's weed and they didn't want their friend to get in trouble, don't buy it. That doesn't happen. Because kids, they come first. And they're not going to take the rap for somebody else's mistakes. They're not. So if they say they're holding the drugs or holding the money, or their friends are buying them these new clothes or giving them these new clothes or whatever, just don't buy it. It just doesn't happen. And if they're using a lot, they're probably selling, because it can get expensive. So you're using it on a regular basis. It's easy to sell the stuff, make money, so that you can buy it. So here's some new threads that they might be wearing if they're selling. And this is actually my daughter, the one here on the left, and this is at their homecoming picture. And they certainly don't dress like that on a regular basis, and I brought those threads. She didn't buy it. Maybe they have new jewelry or things that they would never have to begin with. So, if all these things are happening, you have to believe there's something going on. And then you need to do some probing. So, these are some of the things you can do if you think they might be using or selling. Talk to their friends' parents, whoever they might be hanging out with. Tighten up your curfews, refuse sleepovers, and the reason being is kids rarely get in trouble by themselves. It's much more likely to happen if they're with a group of friends. Not too many kids go out and drink all alone. I mean, it's possible. Not too many kids are smoking weed by themselves. It's possible. But if they've been in trouble, what you might say is, you're going to go it alone for a while. No sleepovers for a while or whatever. If they're making deals or are secretive on the phone all the time, you're checking those phone calls. You're checking those texts. If they don't let you look at their phone or check their texts, you turn off that cell phone service. Easy as that. I had a mom that said, my son won't let me look at his phone. I said, who's paying for the phone? I am. Turn off that service. Easy as that. When they're not home, you have every right to go into the room and look around. Like I said, they are your renters, you are their landlord. You can go in and look. And look in places where you wouldn't look. And this is if you think that they might be using. Kids stuff weed in socks, in pockets, in pens or pencil cases. Girls have been known to put stuff into empty tampon cases. If you have a ceiling like this where they can get up and under it, look under there. Kids have done that. Look in places where you would, inside of books. And you do have the right to do that whenever you see fit. And if they get angry with you, that's too bad, because they have given you reason to believe that this might be happening.